last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
So the issue was that I was in line, but Carly, who's supposed to be with me, was not in line. She had to work.
Like most people.
The Skip and Josh podcast is on now.
Skippy,
Hey, Cub, what's up?
how are you?
Great.
So I feel like I haven't recorded, or we haven't recorded an episode in a while. Let's set the scene for the listeners.
The reason why you feel that way is because we actually haven't recorded in a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I'm in Toronto. Where are you?
I'm in Montreal, my basement.
Okay, great. So now that everyone knows that, you know, it's the All-Star break in baseball, which is good and bad. So you know how much I like the MLB network.
I know, it's great.
But during the All-Star break, they have nothing to put on.
Okay.
So they've been showing movies the last few days.
What have they been showing?
Well, tonight they had Major League 2,
Oh, that's garbage.
which is not great, not terrible.
Willie Mays Hayes.
Yeah, but if you think that's bad,
Yeah.
the other day they had, and I watched the whole thing, I'm embarrassed to say, Summer Catch.
Oh, Jessica Biel.
Yes, but that's the only good thing about the movie.
I know.
It was
There's
a bad movie.
There's one scene where she's in bikini, and that's the only reason why you should watch the movie.
Right. But
Yeah.
I watched the whole thing. I didn't know,
Right, of course.
So
No, that's not a good movie.
not a good movie. Like, so predictable. So anyway.
I'm glad you mentioned baseball movies because I think at one point during this summer, we're going to do an episode of the best sports movies.
We are.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't talk about it now then.
We know Summer Catch won't be on the list.
Well, that's right. That won't be. Let's since it's the it's the unofficial midway point of the baseball season.
Right.
I'd like to do a couple things. I'd like to revisit our preseason predictions and see how right or wrong we were,
Yikes.
and also talk about some guys who made the All-Star team and maybe even the Home Run Derby.
Okay, great. So did you watch like the All-Star game and the Home Run Derby?
I watched both of them, but when I say I watched both of them, I need to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
The TV was on the entire time for both of those things, but I was doing other stuff, making dinner or doing laundry or who knows what. So it wasn't like I was focused on it.
Well, that's the perfect way to watch like any baseball game, especially the All-Star game.
Right. Otherwise, you'd fall asleep.
Yeah.
So the All-Star game, the only really interesting part was when Nelson Cruz came up to bat. Did you see his at bat?
Full disclosure, I watched maybe 12 seconds of the All-Star game.
So you didn't see Nelson Cruz's at bat?
No. The All-Star game makes me sad, honestly, because I wish I liked it more. I remember for so many years it was so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like whatever, So tell me
Okay.
about Nelson Cruz. What happened to him?
So he comes up to bat. I don't know if it was the sixth inning or something. And little do the people know he's got his phone in his back pocket, like when he's coming up to bat, which I don't know how you can bat or do any kind of sporting thing with your phone in your pocket.
A lot of times they have stuff in their back pocket, right? Like that chewing tobacco. They have cans of stuff. And
That's fine, but I mean,
Yeah,
a
a
phone?
phone,
Like, what happens
yeah.
if he has to slide or something?
he won't. Plus, he makes $12 million a year, so he can buy a new phone.
Right. So anyway, he's got his phone in with him, and so he gets up to the plate, and Molina's catching at the time
Right.
in his gold chest protector and his gold catcher's mask, and he gives the phone to Molina, and he says, "Take a picture of me and Joe West, the umpire."
Okay.
Seriously, so he poses
With the
with
umpire.
Joe West
Yeah.
and has Molina take a picture of him.
I didn't think Joe West was such a celebrity.
I think it was like,
His last All-Star game. Yeah.
well, I don't know if it was his last All-Star game, but I mean, he's umped, I don't know how many 100 games.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it was that was actually the only part of the game that stuck out for me, other than the fact it went into extra innings. What I did like about the game was it was moving along at a good pace. It wasn't
Yeah,
one of
it
those
was
games
just
that dragged
crazy.
on for 4 hours.
Yeah. Crazy low-scoring game, right? So
Yeah.
just what
and,
you want to see in an All-Star game, a pitching duel
Well-
with 12 pitchers pitching for each team.
I mean, yeah. So 2-1 final score. Obviously, the pitchers outperformed the hitters in that game.
Yeah.
Although there were 2 homers.
So I mean,
there were only 3 runs in the whole game, and 2 of them were on home runs.
right? Okay, good for them.
So,
but I mean, I don't
anyway.
think the fans left like thoroughly entertained, from that.
No,
game.
that was the other thing. You didn't watch, but it seemed like, I know the stadium was full, but
Right.
it seemed like it was empty. You couldn't hear any noise. Like you could hear a pin drop.
Well, I think the average age of the fans in Miami is 70.
Okay,
Right?
that might explain it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So
Well,
I don't
anyway.
know. The ballpark was nice, actually. What I saw in the home run derby, the ballpark actually, it's an interesting ballpark. And, I know they get a lot of flack for it, the Marlins owners, about building this monstrosity. But,
Well, it was way too expensive.
well, besides the price, it's like a nice little park. And they have the interesting, Cuban Latino flair to it, So props for that.
That's fine, but I hate the Marlins owners, as you know.
Yeah, of course. So does everybody here in Montreal.
But since you mentioned the home run derby,
Well,
I
it
mean,
was far more exciting than the game, right? I mean, the home run derby was one of the better home run derbies in a while.
by the way, I like the new format.
Yeah, well, they're always tweaking the format, but in the end, it's really just about how many homers you're going to hit.
Right, but I do like the format with the clock because
Yeah.
that way it doesn't drag on forever. That's
Yeah.
one thing I like.
And the video game style where you get the bonus time.
Right, and I
Yeah.
also like the fact that it's like March Madness where you play head to head with someone and you win, you go on, you lose, you're out.
Right. Otherwise, they
took-
couldn't. Yeah.
It took too long in the past. It took too long for guys to get eliminated.
Right.
And so it just kept going on and on and on. And you might hit like 40 homers in a round in the first round and
Yeah.
then lose in the second round.
Right.
So I did like the format. So meanwhile, Aaron Judge, I mean, what am I going to say about Aaron Judge that hasn't already been said? It looks like when he hits a home run, it looks like he's not even trying.
Well, I was texting with our Philly correspondent, Mark, about Aaron Judge. And I was like, the only way you could describe Aaron Judge is he's like a cross between Dave Winfield in that he's very tall, right? And lanky in a
He's
way.
even taller than Winfield.
Winfield was tall for the time, but even taller. So he's like a cross between Dave Winfield and Frank Thomas, which is really scary when you think
Yeah,
about it, right?
That is scary.
Because it's like Frank Thomas was just this mountain of a man, right?
Mm.
But Aaron Judge doesn't have that build. He's tall and athletic, but he's
Yeah, he
just,
can run.
He's huge. He's just huge.
Yeah, Frank Thomas couldn't run.
So I mean, if you're a Yankee fan, you have a lot to be excited about after watching that home run derby, and quite frankly, for the start of your season, because Gary Sanchez and Aaron Judge, like these guys seem to be, the real deal. So
Yeah, getting back to our preseason predictions, which we're gonna revisit in a second.
right.
I said that the Yankees were gonna do nothing this year, so clearly I was way wrong about that.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody saw it coming. The Yankees are clearly in like a rebuild.
Yeah, but they look like they're going to do some damage in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Yankees season this year reminds me of the Maple Leafs season in that they have all these young guys that kind of came up, and anything they're getting this year is like gravy. It's bonus time, right? Anything they get is bonus. There was no expectations. So, we'll see. I mean, they're not guaranteed a playoff spot right now, the Yankees.
No, they're not guaranteed,
No.
but I mean, they're in a playoff spot right now. All you have to do is make the playoffs in baseball. And
Oh,
then
yeah,
how
for
many
sure.
wildcard teams do you know that have won the World Series?
Yeah.
Tons.
If you make the playoffs and you get one starter that gets crazy hot and maybe one hitter that gets crazy hot, you can win, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we look at the season so far by looking at each of the divisions and then also comparing to what we predicted at the beginning of the year, right?
Let's do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, just talking about the AL East, I mean, we both picked Boston.
So far we both look good.
We both look good there. Boston's, they are leading the division. It didn't look that good for a while for the Red Sox. They were kind of mediocre for most of the year. And Baltimore was very, very hot at the beginning, if you recall. But things have sort of settled in, and the Red Sox look like a strong team. They're not getting great. Like everyone thought, Mookie Betts could be an MVP or whatever. There's no one in there. I looked at all their stats today. There's no one like in their lineup that's really like having a career year by any means. But they have Mookie Betts, Benintendi, Pedroia, Bogarts. So they have a dangerous lineup, and Chris Sale was a huge acquisition because he's been lights out, right? As much as David Price has been horrible, Chris Sale's been great.
Remember, I was optimistic about Pablo Sandoval because he went on this training program in the offseason and he lost all this weight.
I'm laughing right now because you remember what I told you?
I do remember. You were laughing at me right away. You said he's going to be lousy.
Because every time you hear people saying in the preseason that this guy went on a special diet, or this guy's lost all kinds of weight, or so-and-so's shown up in camp in the greatest shape I've ever seen, it means absolutely zero. You hear that every year, right? You can't believe anything when you hear that kind of stuff.
Clearly you were right.
Yeah.
So he's done nothing and he's no longer in the starting lineup.
It's hard to imagine. Remember how dominant he was for one playoff with the Giants?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he pretty basically won the Giants the World Series one year. The Red Sox thought they had something, but obviously not, right?
There's another example of how free agency doesn't win you divisions or doesn't win you pennants.
Oh, no. I mean, you need a balance of you can supplement your team with free agents, but you need homegrown guys as your basis.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, sticking with the AL East, you being in Toronto, like, what's the mood with the Jays fans? I mean, like,
well, if you recall, I said the Jays would not make the playoffs. You had them as one of your wild card teams.
yes.
So listen, they had a lousy first month of the season, and then they had a very good second month of the season. But the bottom line is, midway through the season, they're still under 500. They can't get to 500. There's been, I think, 8 times where they've been a game under 500. All they had to do was win, and they'd be at 500. And all 8 times they've lost.
I know, but just getting to 500 is not even enough, right? They need
no,
to
I
do
know,
better
but
than
if you
that.
can't get to 500, then you can't even talk about making the playoffs.
So what has been like I know they had so many injuries at the beginning of the year, and the main one being Donaldson. But I mean,
and Sanchez and Happ and I think most of their injured guys are back now. So that's not even the excuse anymore.
And it's too bad because Justin Smoke has been so dominant. Like, he's been great. He's in the All-Star game. No one saw that coming, right? Like,
no.
they lost.
But I mean, that makes up for the off seasons, that Batista's having, or that Tulowitzki's having,
or the loss
or
of
that Donaldson's
Encarnacion.
having, right?
Yeah.
So I mean.
Yeah.
It evens itself out. You weren't expecting Smoke to be so good. You weren't expecting Bautista and Donaldson and Tulowitzki to be so bad.
But mostly it's the starting pitching that's let them down also, right?
Well, again, they've had 3 of their starting pitchers on the DL at one point or another.
Yeah.
So
where do you think they go from here? Like, I mean, obviously, look, I watch TSN and Sportsnet as much as you. And, the big talk is like, are they buyers or sellers? Like, what do you think?
They still could make the playoffs. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, remember a couple of years ago, they were just hovering around 500 to come All-Star break, and then they went on a crazy tear, right?
Right, but they had a bit better record than they do now, and they didn't have as many teams to pass as they'd have to now.
Right.
So if I was in charge, I would be a seller. That's me. I mean, I understand. Obviously, the fans are excited. They had 2 great back-to-back seasons, and they would like to have a third. But it's just not in the cards for them. I mean, there's just too many teams they'd have to pass.
Yeah, it's not happening.
They do, like I said, they have a shot at the wild card. They're only 5 games back, but you have to pass, 6, 7 teams?
Right.
It's not going to happen. And so what would be so terrible about, unloading guys like Bautista or whatever? I wouldn't unload everybody. Tulowitzki's still under contract for a bunch of years. And, I'd keep guys like Russell Martin and I'd keep Josh Donaldson. These guys aren't exactly old.
No, well,
but I don't know if you could get anything for Jose Bautista.
No, you can't. I mean, he's completely useless. They should have never brought him back. I mean, there's a reason why they weren't going to bring him back, and they only brought him back because of desperation, and then they had no one else to get, so they're like, we'll bring back Bautista. But he's, as well as I do, his days are gone, right? He's not a.
I mean, I think there would be a team out there that's trying to eke into the playoffs that needs a bat. That would say, okay, we'll take him for the last, 2-3 months of the season.
Yeah, maybe.
Especially knowing that he's a free agent in the offseason, so they wouldn't be on the hook to pay him next year.
I can't see like a good team getting better by adding him, Well,
it all depends. Like if there's a team out there that needs a DH.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess. So moving to the AL Central, we both picked Cleveland.
Yeah. And so far, that's looking good.
It wasn't looking good for a while. Minnesota was leading the division for quite a while.
And they're only 2.5 back.
Yeah, they're a big surprise because they've scored a ton of runs. The Twins are just have been on fire offensively all season long, hitting homers like crazy. I mean, you saw him in the home run contest a couple nights ago, Sano, right?
Yes.
So, I mean,
I have to say there were like 2, maybe 3 guys in the home run derby that I've never heard of before.
Who, Sano?
And Justin Bour.
I didn't honestly never heard of that guy. So, look, like it usually does, like the old saying, the cream does rise to the top, and that's what's happened also in the American League Central with Cleveland. You know, slow and steady, and now they're in first, and I expect them to win the division, like I'm sure you do also, right?
I do, yeah.
They have a good lineup, right? Encarnacion hasn't been great for them, but he's been solid enough. You know, they have Lindor, they have a good lineup, and they have a couple of really good pitchers. Carrasco, who was injured in the playoffs last year, who's having a fine season, and what's his name, Kluber. So like those two make up a good 1-2 punch, and they have a very, very strong bullpen. You know, with Andrew Miller and Cody Allen. It's, you know, the recipe in the last several years. What the Kansas City Royals taught us is that you can really go far with a deep bullpen. And Cleveland's kind of following that recipe.
So they did suffer an injury on the last game before the All-Star break. Jason Kipnis is on the DL now.
How long is he out for?
I think he's only on the 10-day DL, but I mean that doesn't mean anything because you see guys go on the 10-day DL and they're out for a month.
Right. Yeah. No, the 10-day DL is just a recommendation.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how long he's going to be out.
Right.
It's a right hamstring, and we'll see. But he's an important part of their team.
Yeah, no, for sure he is. But I mean, like they can withstand that as long as he's not out for a long time. I mean, I can't see anybody else winning that division other than Cleveland, honestly. And then in the West, we were both in agreement with Texas, but
and they look like they're cooked.
They look like they're cooked. I mean, I was thinking Hugh Darvish was going to have a huge year. It hasn't been happening. Their lineup is just so. And a team that we both chose as the wild card coming out of that division is the best team in baseball, the Houston Astros. I mean,
they're 60-29. They're 31 games over 500. I don't know that I've ever seen any team be that many games over 500.
The Seattle Mariners, maybe, in like Ichiro's first year, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I actually got to see the Houston Astros play live against the Jays about a week ago.
They're an exciting team because the middle of their lineup has those 3 big, young, exciting hitters, right?
I mean, their entire lineup, not just the middle. But it's like everyone in that lineup can hit.
It's that Altuve, Correa, Springer, right? Those 3 guys, right? They're so
Springer
good.
leads off.
I know. Springer leads off.
Which is insane that Springer's a leadoff hitter.
Because they can't figure out what to do with him because he would be a cleanup hitter on most teams.
And they only split the J. Like it was a 4-game series and they won 2 and lost 2. So you figure, it was a close series. But the 2 games that Houston won,
I know.
One was 12-2 and I think the other one was 19-1.
19-1. But when there's blowouts like that, it's usually an indication that the losing team has no bullpen, right? And they have no
Well, in
no
those
alternatives.
2 cases, in those 2 blowouts, it was the starting pitching that let the Jays down.
Right.
I mean, Sanchez was pitching his first game after coming off the DL and clearly wasn't ready.
Right.
And the other game where they got blown out, Happ started the game and he didn't do well either.
The Angels are a little bit of a surprise because they are hanging in that division, despite the fact that Mike Trout has been injured for so long. The fact that they've been able to tread water without Trout is like really encouraging for them. So I think they do. I think they fancy themselves as a potential wild card team, although, they're still, they're in the hunt, but it's not going to be easy, right?
Yeah, the Angels and the Texas Rangers have virtually identical records.
Yeah.
And so, yes, they both have a shot at the wild card. There's no question.
Right. I mean, right now, Tampa's in that second wild card spot after the Yankees, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, which is also a surprise.
Yeah, but they always find a way to stay semi-competitive, right, the Rays? So
it's funny because I did pick Houston and Baltimore as my 2 wild card teams.
Yeah.
But at one point, I think
you're not cooked yet with Baltimore. You're like, they're still hanging around.
Well, but at one point, I think I might have said to you, and this might have been, a month or 2 into the season, that the 2 wildcard teams were both going to come from the AL East.
Right, you did. You were adamant about that.
Right now, it looks that way, but we'll see. There's still a lot of season left to play.
Right. So, with the AL MVP, I took Altuve, you took Correa. So I think one of us is looking great. Actually, both of us are made really good, strong picks there. And as much as we made great picks for the MVP, we both stank for our Cy Young pick, which was I picked Yu Darvish and you picked Danny Duffy. So that's out the window. And for Rookie of the Year, I had Andrew Benintendi, who has a really good shot.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Yohan Moncada. I'm not sure what is he doing?
He is in the minors still, and he hasn't had an at-bat in Major League Baseball this year.
I know, but the level of prospect he is huge, right?
Right. I mean, he played almost 20 games with the Red Sox last year. He may still get called up.
Yeah.
But he's on the White Sox now, and they're not playing for this season.
Right.
In fact, they just made a trade today.
Yeah.
With the Cubs, which was surprising to see the White Sox and the Cubs make a trade.
Never happens. So they traded Jose Quintana. So let's switch to the National League.
Sure.
We could start with the Central just because we're segueing to the Cubs.
Yes.
The Cubs, both are our pick basically to win the division, and even to we both picked them to go to the World Series, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. I picked them to win the World Series, but that's not looking good right now. So, Milwaukee has the division on a lock right now, unless they falter, which is possible because I'm not really sure how Milwaukee's doing it. They had Eric Thames at the beginning of the year on fire. He still has 23 homers, but he's definitely cooled down. And, when you look at their lineup and their pitching, it's kind of like everybody's chipping in. There's a lot of good things going their way for the Brewers. And the Cubs are just, you talk about the World Series hangover. They're like on a major World Series hangover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're it's interesting. The entire National League, it almost looks like the 5 playoff teams are decided. Like they almost don't have to play the rest of the season. Obviously that's not the case. But
I wouldn't count the Cubbies out, but yeah, you are. I would say for sure the West and the East are decided, right?
Yeah. It looks that way.
And the only reason why you wouldn't say the Central's decided is because maybe I'm holding out hope for the Cubs. But the Cubs won the division because of a balanced lineup and great starting pitching. And their starting pitching sucks, right? Lester can't get anybody out. Neither can Arrieta.
Lester and Lackey are old.
Yeah, Lester, Lackey, and Arrieta are all garbage, right?
Arrieta's at least not old, but yes, they're all garbage.
They're all garbage. And Anthony Rizzo is hitting about 60 points lower than he should. Right?
And your boy Kyle Schwarber is having a terrible year.
Schwarber, don't even get me started about Schwarber. I based my whole fantasy team around this guy
2 years ago.
No, and this year.
And this year again.
Yeah, I had him because he's catcher eligible in Yahoo leagues.
Okay.
So I had him as my catcher. But when you're hitting 200 and you have no homers, what's the point?
Yeah.
So the Cubs are really, I want them to win. I want them to do better. I want them to win the division. I like them when they're in the playoffs. But, if it's continuing the way it's looking now, I just don't see how the Brewers are probably going to hang on. And not because they're a great team, because the division's not great, right?
Yeah. Look, like you said, the Cubs can still make the playoffs. Even the Cardinals can still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee doesn't exactly have the pedigree that you can say, oh yeah, they're going to take care of things and they're going to win the division.
Right.
They're 9 games over, which is great, and they've had a nice first half, which is great.
Yeah.
But anything can happen.
Sure. The other divisions are wrapped up, like we said, right? So the Dodgers are completely running away, despite the fact that Arizona is having a really good year and they're actually 2 games up in the wild card. The Dodgers are a force to be reckoned with. I just wrote down some notes about the season so far, and I wrote Dodgers equals beast. Their whole team, right? Their lineup.
Well, they have a better record than Houston, if that's even possible.
Their lineup is great and balanced. Justin Turner is hitting 360, 370. And Bellinger just hits homers like crazy.
Well, that's the thing. No one thought about Bellinger. He wasn't on the opening day roster.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't on the team.
Right.
They had to call him up from the minors.
Yeah. So
you have this very good team, and then all of a sudden, let's
boost.
call up this guy from AAA. Oh, what does he do? He just hits 22 homers in his first 50-something games.
Right, and the same thing could be said about their starting pitching, where they already had a good rotation, obviously anchored by Kershaw, who's again, having a ridiculous season. He seems unhittable. Alex Wood, who's been like basically a journeyman for his whole career until he showed a little bit of signs of life at the end of the year for the Dodgers. He picked up right where he left off last year for the Dodgers, and he's an all-star, and he's having a great year. So, like, to me, the Dodgers are the best team in the National League, probably the best team in baseball. I think they're probably better than Houston, only for the fact that, like, Kershaw is so good, it's ridiculous.
I think the Astros starting pitching is more
deeper.
Balanced.
Yeah.
You know, sure, the Dodgers have the best starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. I'll give you that.
But he hasn't been good in the playoffs for the last how many years, right?
That's true.
He hasn't been good in the playoffs.
But I actually like the Astros rotation as a whole better than the Dodgers.
Right.
It's interesting. It's interesting that that the two wildcard teams are both from the NL West, which I never would have predicted that, and I never would have predicted Arizona and or Colorado.
Right, and I know you picked Nolan Arenado as your NL MVP.
I did.
And he has a shot. Because
he made the All-Star team.
If Colorado makes the playoffs as the wild card, the voters are not going to have the excuse that they had last year, and he's having another great season, right?
They'll still have the excuse that he plays in Coors Field.
That's always going to be a
problem. Is it still called Coors Field? I don't even know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I picked Anthony Rizzo as the MVP, so obviously we know where that's going.
Right.
I did pick Kershaw as a Cy Young, so I'm looking good for that.
You are.
And you picked Syndergaard. So speaking of the Mets.
Yeah, the Mets are a disaster.
Yeah. Look, the Nationals are running away with the division. They have a very strong team. They have a fantastic pitching rotation, you know, anchored by Scherzer and Strasburg, right? The rotation's extremely strong. But as you know, like, honestly, if the Nationals, if they had any bullpen, would have the best record in baseball.
Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do. They got to find a closer. And, I mean, the White Sox are selling off all their players for parts, so they've got a good closer who's currently on the DL. And there were rumors that the Nationals were going to get him in the offseason and didn't. Mm-hmm. Like maybe throw him into the Adam Eaton deal and whatever.
Yeah.
But now it looks like the Nationals are going to have to go out and get him.
I'm sure they are going to acquire a closer. Like if they don't acquire a closer, then their general manager needs to just leave town. Like it's the glaring weakness of that team is so obvious to anybody watching that it's like they have to do something. Like they just have to, right? I mean, they have such a good team. If they have any kind of closer, they are a major, major contender. You know, look at their lineup. Their lineup is sick. Bryce Harper, Daniel Murphy, Zimmerman, right? Like Rendon, right? Like their lineup is fantastic.
So, I mean, I don't understand how they can't just find a guy or take one of their starters out of the rotation and say, you're now the closer and deal with it.
They must have someone in AAA, no?
I don't know. I really don't know.
It's quite pathetic, the Nationals. It's embarrassing for them that their bullpen is as bad as it is, right?
You mentioned the Mets earlier.
Oy.
You had picked them to make the playoffs as a wild card team.
Well, look, like many fans, I thought the Mets were going to have a good team. You know, if you get Harvey, DeGrom, Syndergaard on the same team, like, how can that team be bad? But, like, you know, pitchers don't stay healthy this day and age, and they haven't been able to get their pitchers healthy. Harvey has had a terrible year. He's been in the newspaper for all the wrong reasons, and they forgot how to hit also, right? So
yeah, well, they never really had much hitting other than Cespedes to begin with.
And then he sucks, right? He can't hit this year.
Yeah.
So, like, if they have only Cespedes, then, you know, and he's no good, then they're in trouble.
The biggest surprise to me is the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, I know. It's embarrassing for them because I had them picked as a wild card team.
So did I.
And they're bad.
And you know what? Like, I was close to having them win the division even.
Oh my God.
So, you know, San Francisco, even in the years that they don't win the World Series, they're still a good team. So I'm stunned that they're 34-56. I mean,
and you see Buster Posey's numbers, he's ridiculous. So it's like they got no pitching and their lineup is full of holes.
Well, it doesn't help that Madison Bumgarner had that stupid injury and hasn't pitched since like April. That didn't help them.
That's their big thing, right? He's their you take away the number one starter off of any of the teams that we just mentioned, and it makes a big difference, right?
Right, but he only pitches once every 5 days. That should not account for their lousy record.
No, but it could get them to 500 maybe. I don't know.
But NL Rookie of the Year. So I said it was going to be Hunter Renfroe, who's having a decent season. I mean, I don't think he's going to win Rookie of the Year, but
I'm not sure who the front runner is at this point. Well, I guess it's Bellinger, right? It has to be Bellinger, right, at this point.
yeah. Hunter Renfroe's not going to win it, but at least he's in the lineup every day. The guy that you picked for NL Rookie of the Year, I'm not even sure how to pronounce it or spell his name.
Ozzy Albies.
Yeah, he's not in Major League Baseball, so I don't know anything about him.
He's tearing it up for the Gwinnett, whatever their team is called in
Really?
AAA.
I think they're called the Braves, actually.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say he's tearing it up. Well, he's playing every day for the Braves farm team, but they haven't called him up yet. And it's probably, due to service time. They don't want to burn this guy,
Let's go back to, if you recall, it was on, let's say, June or July. No, it was June 6th.
Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me that you built a time machine?
June 6th, Scooter Gennett hit 4 homers in one game.
Yeah.
And that brought his total of homers for the entire season at that point to 7.
Yeah.
And I think you said to me on the air that he wasn't even going to hit 10 homers all season long.
Right, I did say that.
Right. So just to have a Scooter Gennett update.
Yeah, put it on the board.
Yeah, he's got a total of 15 homers this year.
He's proven me wrong.
So he's way past 10.
Right.
So I win that one.
Good for you. I'm happy.
In fact, so obviously in June he had 4 in one game. He had 9 in the entire month of June. And in July, which, there's only been, 9 games?
Yeah.
He's hit 3 homers in July. So
He's on fire.
He's having a good July.
So where do you think he's going to end up? He's going to get to 20, 25?
Well, I think he'll definitely get to 20. 25 is pushing it a bit, I think.
Right. Okay. What else do you have to say about baseball?
Well, I'm just looking at the league leaders in both the AL and the NL, batting averages, home runs, ribbies, the important categories. So it's pretty amazing. I know we talked a little bit about Aaron Judge earlier. His OPS is over 1,000.
Yeah, well, he's going crazy, the guy.
It's insane.
He hits homers every day.
Well,
every
not
day.
every day.
Every day you turn on SportsCenter and he's hitting a home run.
But he also has a good batting average. Now, the interesting thing is, I don't know, I didn't even realize this myself. He has struck out over 100 times already.
Well, that's to be expected for home run hitters, and he's a young hitter too, right? The thing with him is, it'll be interesting to see how he does the second time around now, the second half. Pitching coaches may start to develop a book on this guy and how to get him out, and they're going to try to identify the weaknesses. I still think he's going to hit homers. There's no way this guy's not going to hit homers. He might hit 200. He might hit 150. He's still going to hit homers, right? Mm-hmm. But the question is he going to still be an effective player? Can he keep his batting average and get enough hits and get enough walks and cut down on the strikeouts to really become like a superstar, like the Yankee fans want him to be?
I think he will still hit homers. He's going to also strike out a lot. And you're right. The second time around, pitchers should know a little bit more about him and maybe know how to get him out.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, in the National League, it's interesting. There's only one guy in the AL that's got an OPS over 1,000. But in the National League, there are actually 3 guys that have an OPS over 1,000, which is also insane. One of them is Bryce Harper, which doesn't surprise me.
He also hits homers every day.
Right. Another one is Paul Goldschmidt, which doesn't surprise me either, really.
Yeah, he's fabulous, yeah.
The one that does surprise me a little bit, maybe shouldn't, is the OPS NL leader, is Joey Votto.
Yeah, well, he has a resurgence of power this year that is like a little bit out of character. I mean, Joey Votto, he had that one great MVP season, and he's had very good seasons ever since, right? He's still been a very good player, but he doesn't hit a lot of homers. And he draws a lot of walks, right? Joey Votto is he goes up there. His on-base percentage is always incredibly high. But this year, for whatever reason, he's just turned on the power.
And he's also only struck out 42 times.
I mean, he's a fantastic hitter. He's a fantastic hitter. But he was always a very good hitter, just a very good hitter with some power. Now he's got, league leading power, right? So...
And he's also going to deliver on his promise. He promised Zach Cozart that if he made the All-Star team, he'd get him a donkey.
So he's going to buy him a donkey?
Yeah, I think he actually already has bought him a donkey.
A pet?
Yeah, I'm not sure where they're going to keep the donkey. I
Does
hope Zach
Cozart live on a
lives-
farm?
I was just going to say, I hope he does, because I don't think you can bring a donkey into the house.
I don't know where he's going to keep it.
Certainly not into a condo. I don't think condo rules would
We'll
allow
have the
that.
Scooter Jeanette watch, and we'll have the Cozart donkey watch.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. I love it. Okay. So, I mean, that's it for our baseball episode. And reminding everybody to, if you're listening on iTunes, to please give us a review. If you're listening for the first time, definitely subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll get the update of any new episodes right away if you subscribe. And by the way, I hope everybody is enjoying our new logo.
Yes, the rebrand is now complete. So we've got the new logo, we got the new name of the show, we got new bumpers, intros and outros. Hopefully everyone enjoys that, and I'm really happy with the design that you created. You're quite the artist. I'm very impressed.
It's okay.
So yeah, I'm excited about this summer, and we'll try and record more often.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'll speak to you next time.
Okay, have a good
right.
week.
They still have no pitching. Gooding's a question mark. You don't recover from those rotator cuffs so fast.
I'm not worried about the Mets pitching. They got pitching. They got no hitting.
Oh, hitting, they got hitting. Padilla, Murray, they got no defense.
Defense, please. They need speed.
Speed, they got Coleman. They need a bullpen.
Franco's no good. They got no team leaders.
They got Franco. What they need is a front office.
But you gotta like their chances.
I love the chances.
The Skip and Josh podcast is over now. Don't worry, there'll be another episode soon.